and thank you for joining our monthly webinar. I'm Phil Portman, the CEO at Textdrip. Money problems are a major cause of stress, anxiety, relationship, and health problems, and even divorce. Most people want more and never seem to have enough. I, like most people, always thought more money, working more hours, longer shifts, would solve my money problems. But I was wrong. If you don't tell your money what to do, you'll never have enough of it and you'll never be wealthy. I'd like to introduce you to the host of our webinar, author of the Millionaire Choice, Tony Bradshaw.
Yeah, hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for showing up for the Textdrip webinar. I'm excited to be talking to you guys this morning and about some of the things I've learned over the years about money. And so let me jump in real quick and get started. Before I get started, let me tell you, we're going to have a Q&A time at the end. So if you have some questions, please post your questions in the chat, and then we'll try to get to some of those at the end, depending on how much time we have. But we'll save all the questions till the end. But as Philip mentioned, I'm the host of the Millionaire Choice podcast, the author of the Millionaire Choice book, which came out a few years ago. Prior to that, I spent about 15 years working in the personal finance education space for a pretty well-known radio guy, and left there in 2016 and then started my own journey. But today you're probably here because you got some questions about money, right? You've got some questions about wealth, how to build some wealth. And I'm going to try to, I can't answer all your questions today because I could talk about this stuff for months and months and months with you to try to educate you and bring you up to speed. I've been at it now for 25 years, but I am going to try to get you pointed in the right direction and get you in a track. What I call is get your money flowing in the right direction, because that's one of the first things you have to do. And before I get into the stuff, I want to share some stories with you today. And these are all stories that have been people that I've met through my podcast. And this guy right here, his name is Leor Gantz. And Leor Gantz started investing when he was 6 years old and became a millionaire at age 34. But let's look a little bit more deeply into his story. Leor grew up in Israel, and his dad's business failed when he was 13 years old. So he had to start working at 13 to help support his family because his dad wasn't making enough money and the family wasn't making enough money to support everyone. So by age 16, this young guy had saved up $25,000 and had it sitting in a savings account, which is, for people that know how to build wealth, money sitting in a savings account is not a good place to leave it. And so he was very fortunate because a banker who he had met at the bank realized he had this money and said, "Hey, what are you doing with all this cash in the bank?" And he's like, "Well, I'm just saving money because, my dad went broke. We didn't have enough money. I need to save it so that our family's safe." And so he started investing at age 16. This banker directed him and said, "Hey, you ought to read some of these guys' books over here, these investor guys, and go learn how to invest." So he started investing. And then 2 years later, at age 18, his dad's second business failed. And Leor's like, "Well, how does this happen twice in 5 years to the same family, to the same dad?" So he started learning about entrepreneurship. So he went from learning about investing at age 16 to learning about entrepreneurship. And that's when he started moving into the business world. And that was Leor's journey to become a millionaire by age 34. It took him about 18 years from the time he started investing to the time he made a different financial choice, to become a millionaire. So let me talk to you about your money mindset, because this is where a lot of it starts. 90% of Americans are, are not millionaires, about 70+% until gas prices hit, right? When gas prices hit and it exploded to double the price, there's probably a few more people living paycheck to paycheck today than even before. And so we were in roughly a 70 percentile range in the U.S. of living paycheck to paycheck, people that couldn't pay their bills every month. But your money mindset is how you think, feel, and act about your money. And based on how you grew up, like I grew up in a broke home, I learned broke money principles. And when I was 25, I was doing the same things with money that my parents had been doing. And my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles, all doing the same things with money. And so how you think, feel, and act about your money is all part of your money mindset. For some people, they have very negative emotions around money, even when they get older. And they don't have good behaviors, or they don't act well with their money. They tend to spend it all. And that's going to affect your ability to build wealth. So you have to reprogram your mind. That's where a lot of this starts. And it's going to affect your ability to enjoy life, help others, and have a positive impact on society. I'm a big believer that the more money you have, the more positive impact you can have. So you get more, as you have more money, you can do all three of these things. Now, there are other things in your heart that matter when it comes to money. If you have an unhealthy relationship with money, or you have an unhealthy relationship, maybe you've got your own personal issues you got to work through, then that's also going to limit what you can do with these things. Money doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you more of who you really are. And so if you've got some character flaws and character issues, more money is just going to magnify those issues. So you have to work through those things separately. But this is where a lot of this starts. And most people in the United States are trapped in their money mindset. I come from a family that was low income and not doing well. Even today, I would have to tell you, my dad, he's 72 years old, still working full time, and probably will until the day he dies. So he's a good working guy. He's very, very strong work ethic, and that's how I've known him ever since I was little. But it's sad for me, as somebody who's built wealth, that I wasn't able to bring my dad, my mom, and my sister along with me on that journey. And it's because my money mindset shifted when I was 25 years old, but their money mindsets never shifted. They didn't shift along with me. And they also went to classes, financial classes, and I was able to talk to them some, but I wasn't able to shift them. So I can only have an impact on myself and have a slight influence on other people. But don't let that limit you as you're working through this. So in your lifetime, if you're like me, I started working when I was about 13 years old, full-time, not full-time, part-time. And weekends, I had a crappy job that my mom made me do. I had to pick weeds out of garden beds at the gas stations, convenience stores that my mother managed. I had to paint curbs. I had to clean concrete from oil stains, pick up cigarette butts. I was basically a property janitor. That was my job from the time I was 13. Also did some work with my dad. And between the ages of 15 and 65, which is where a lot of Americans start to work, if you work 8 hours a day in those ranges, which I started working a lot more when I turned 16 than I did when I was 13, obviously, there's child labor laws and things like that. But over time, over that 50-year period, you're going to work about 100,000 hours. Now, if you're like me, there were times in my life where I worked 80, 90 hours a week. And so you're going to double up some of those weeks and build up some of those gaps. So if you're an overtime person or an overtime job, you're going to work more than 100,000 hours in your lifetime. If you work, what's considered the minimum, then you're working about 100,000 hours. And so let me ask you a question, and this is more of shifting your money mindset. What are you going to have to show for your efforts when you get to the end and you can't work any longer, or you're having to work full time, like my dad is when he's 72 years old? What will you have to show for your efforts? What are you going to have left out of all that work and all that labor? And I really didn't think about this when I was younger, but now that I'm older and I'm getting closer to 65, I'm like, wow, like I've put all this work in and I've got a little bit, but should I have more? Should I have more than what I've been able to accumulate? So even as a millionaire, I look at what I've been able to accomplish and I'm going, wow, I probably could have done a little bit better, but I'm not in too bad a shape, but I wish I'd done just a little bit better. And all for the reasons we're going to talk about in a minute. So 1 in 7 bankruptcy filers are over age 65. So that's about 15% roughly of bankruptcy filers, about 12% are over age 65. So that's not where you want to be. That's not a good place to be. But again, these are people that either had hardships hit them or they didn't start with the plan. They didn't change their money mindset anywhere along that journey. Student loan debt for 65-year-olds increased to 866%. 2.3 million people over age 62 have student loan debt. Imagine that. And that number is going to go up, I think, about 5 million every decade for the next several decades. So when you get out there a few more decades, 1 or 2 decades, you're going to have close to 10 million people that are going to be carrying student loan debt into their 60s. That is just a crazy number. And the average student loan debt carried by these individuals is $37,000. So that's $37,000 extra debt on top of if they're still paying on a house or whatever else they have. Hopefully not too much, but those are not good statistics. So you really need to be asking yourself when you're thinking about that. Retirement for me is really a dirty word. When you're young, you don't care about it. It's too far away. It's 40 years out or 30 years out or 20 years out. It's like you got time. You think you got time to deal with it. and you just keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. But the reality, and when you're older, retirement, you're scared to death of it because you didn't do anything when you were in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s, or you didn't do enough because you didn't understand what it meant to retire. I'll use a great example. We have inflation right now that's going on. The government tells us it's 9.1%, I think is the last number. The reality is it's closer to 20 or 30%. And so if you had $1 million in a savings account, that means that your $1 million is worth 20 to 30% less. That means your purchasing power just dropped from $1 million down to like 800,000 or 700,000. That's the reality of what inflation does. So when you have a retirement plan and you're thinking about long term, you also have to think about the unknowns, right? The inflation rates. And most retirement planners or financial planners are really planning with like a 3 to 4% inflation rate. So you have to not just trust what they say, you have to figure it out for yourself. But that's a sidebar. What I want to really push for you is to not think about it like retirement. That's the wrong kind of thinking, because it traps you into a construct that is not necessarily in your best interest. What I really want you to think about is, when do you want to live with financial freedom, the life the way you want to? So think about that for a minute. So when can you have freedom to live life the way you want to, not beholden to a job that you don't like? I think the stats are 80% of Americans are trapped in jobs that they don't really like to do. That's not a good place. You can't, enjoy life more when you're trapped, for 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day in a job that you don't like. So you have to put yourself in a position where you can reshape your life the way that you want it. And that really comes down to your money mindset. Do you want to be trapped somewhere or doing something you don't want to do, and work until you're 72 or 75? Or do you want to find a way to create this financial freedom? For me, when I got started at age 25, my mission was very clear. I just said, hey, I'm broke and I'm doing some bad things with my money. I need to shift. And so I made a millionaire choice at that point. I started to shift my mind around money and how it worked. I started to learn about money and how to manage and multiply it. And then alongside that, I put together what I call my millionaire plan, my plan to be a millionaire by age 40. Okay. And I believe that finances are very predictable. There are some things that happen that are unpredictable, but they are relatively predictable based on principles and past history. And so I believe that people can predict the date that they would become a millionaire by planning that out and how that works. And for me, my goal was to have financial freedom by age 40 and living off my investments. Now, I didn't plan on getting married and my wife having $20,000 in debt. I was debt free, but my wife wasn't. I didn't plan on having 6 kids. And I tried to talk my wife into buying cloth diapers to save money, but she said, no, it's not going to work. It's not good. We're not doing that. And thankfully, I had a boss that told me not to do the cloth diapers because he had done it, and he highly recommended not doing it. So we ended up buying diapers, and we've had 6 kids. Costs me, I think I did the math on it, $1,500 to $2,000 in diapers per child over the first 2 to 3 years. That's a lot of money. That was not money I had in my financial plan. Also, what you had to pay for a baby to be born. So those curves will come at you, but you still keep marching towards your goal, right? So my goal was to be a millionaire by age 40. Now, because of these additional responsibilities, I wasn't smart enough to figure out how a wife, factored into the plan, or the kids factored into the plan. But I was still able to hit my goal of becoming a millionaire, but I wasn't able to break free and live off my investments by the time I was 40. I started doing that at age 46. And so it took me a little bit longer to reach financial freedom the way that I wanted to. And even then, my vision around money has changed quite a bit, because now I know more and understand how money works on my journey. But that factor drove me towards those goals. And that's what I'm talking about today with you guys. Is I really want to see you get your money and your finances moving in the right direction. I call it get your money and your work and your mind flowing towards wealth, not flowing away from you. And that's where most Americans and most people in the world are. Their money is flowing away from them. It's not flowing towards them or towards things that actually build them financial security. So when do you want to retire? The government keeps moving this date up. So if you're a little bit older, it's probably 65. A few years later, they changed it, in the next decade or so to 66, to 67. I think it's moving up to 69 and a half for the younger generations. So they're continuing to move the bar for retirement because the government is running out of money to service these Social Security and these other plans. So the only way they have to make that up is to allow more people to die off before they reach retirement age. My mother passed away at 67. My mother-in-law passed away at 70. My boss on my engineering job passed away at 64, I think 65. And so those are very scary numbers for me. So I don't like teaching people, hey, save for retirement, because retirement means you start enjoying your money in your 60s. And I'm like, everybody I know has died in their 60s. Like, a lot of people have died in their 60s. Now, some people have lived on past that, but some very close people that are dear to me have died in their 60s. So I don't believe that's a good date. I like the age 59 and a half. And the reason I like that number is because if you need to, or you want to, you can actually start drawing on your retirement plans without having tax implications or tax penalties. If you take out your money early out of your retirement plan, you're going to pay like a 10% penalty to the government if you pull out of your Roth, if you pull out of a 401k, on top of other things like capital gains and stuff that you might pay depending on what plan you're in. But I set this goal as the low bar. Now, for me, I mentioned that I'm living financially free at age 50 or 46. I'm currently 51. So I'm a little bit ahead of this number. And I've got some different financial goals now than I had, even years ago. But this is the date I would say set as your minimum, because it allows you to enjoy life financially free. The idea is that you have enough cash flow or enough investments to where you can live life the way you want to. And that can happen at a sooner age than this. I've got some friends, which I'll talk about in a minute, who are living financially free at age 30. And they have quite a bit more wealth than I do, honestly. And they're really cool guys. So 40% of the world's millionaires live in the United States. That number may or may not have changed recently with all the financial stuff that's going on, the recession that we're starting in or getting into now. Things are shifting. 10% of U.S. households are millionaire households. There's about 115 million households in America the last time I checked. That means I believe about 12 million of those households, like mine, are millionaire households. And so the reason I show you these statistics is because a lot of people believe that becoming a millionaire, using the word millionaire, is like smoke and mirrors, and it's not. Those are very significant numbers. The population of the U.S., when you look at the global population, should only have about 3% millionaires if it was distributed equally across the world. So we have roughly 3 to 4 times more millionaires in the United States than we should have per capita across the globe and the global population. And what that says to me, and statistically, and with the stories that I've interviewed on people on my show, the Millionaire Choice Show, is that America is still a land of opportunity. And the stories that I'm sharing with you from these people that came from broke homes just like mine should help you solidify that in your mind, that, we're not special. I don't have a highly educated background. I'm just an average guy from a lower income neighborhood with drug dealers across the street who shot bullets into my front window of my house. That's where I grew up. And, friends who dealt pot and other drugs out of their own homes that were just street, houses down from my street or from my house. So, the possibilities are there, and it really starts with your mind and your mindset. So 4 misbeliefs with wealth. These are things that kind of hold people back. I also call them excuses. You could say excuses, 4 excuses on why you're not building wealth. A lot of people say money's evil, so I don't want it. I don't want to have money in my life because it's evil. That's an excuse, and it's also not true. I'll never be rich. These are things we tell people ourselves. I'm born here. I'm going to die here. This is the way things are. It's just not true. Wealth is bad, and wealthy people are bad. So I don't want to be wealthy. These are things people tell themselves. And then those rich people got lucky. And all of these things are lies. The truths are, the love of money is the root of all evil. Money itself is not evil. It's how you attach yourself to money in your heart and in your mind that causes that to come out. So like I said, money doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you more of who you really are. So if you have some deep-seated issues, those deep-seated issues are going to manifest more. Anyone can become a millionaire. That's one of the slogans I use. And I really believe that, especially if you're in the United States, but even if you're not in the United States, that is also true. It's just more difficult for some people who are not in the United States to become millionaires, but it does happen. You have to learn how to make, manage, and multiply your money. Money is just a tool. Rich people didn't get lucky. They had to learn how to make, manage, and multiply their money. Warren Buffett, he's called the Oracle of Omaha. He is widely acknowledged as the greatest investor of all time, right? He didn't come out of the womb. He wasn't born with a stock trading manual in his hand. He had to figure out how to make, manage, and multiply that money. And everybody has to go through that same cycle, not just the richest people, but they just may have gone through it a little bit sooner. I've got some friends who started investing when they were 6 years old. I've got my kids started at age 16. I didn't start till I was age 25. But everybody has to go through that journey if they're going to build wealth. They all have to start somewhere. And so you're going to end up in one of these four buckets. Either you're there right now or you're going to be there in the future. This is a broke bucket, the getting by bucket, the future millionaire bucket, and the millionaire bucket. Now, there's another bucket over there on the side called billionaire bucket, but we're not going to talk about that one today. The broke bucket says that you spend more than you make, more money than you make. Now, maybe for other reasons. Maybe you're a bad money manager. Maybe it's just you're tight on cash and you don't have enough cash flow. No budget and no spending plan. So your money is just literally slipping through your fingers. And a lot of people are living in that space. They don't have a plan or a place for their money to go. So it slips away from them. You're picking up debt. I've got some friends that, have picked up quite a bit of debt, and there's no reason for them. When you're making $180,000 a year, there's not a real reason to be picking up debt. You just have a money management problem. Trouble paying bills on time. They generally have no financial vision, and this is where a lot of people live. They don't have a vision for their future, so they're stuck in a cycle, an endless cycle of work for money, earn your money, spend your money, and they just keep going back and forth in that cycle. And what we want to do is break up that cycle to add some other factors in there for you. No financial goals, not clear on where they're going, and then not getting money smart. You're not learning about money. The getting by bucket says that you are making enough money. You may or may not be on a budget. But maybe you're a little bit better of a money manager. Maybe you don't spend as much. May or may not be in debt. And you may or may not have trouble paying your bills on time. So you're just getting a little bit better. You've got a little less stress, a little bit of wiggle room. Limited or no financial vision, and limited or no financial goals, and not consistently getting money smart. That's where some of my family members are living right now. This is their life. They're right here in this place. And I would love to see them shift. The future millionaire bucket says that you're investing aggressively. So on my show, my slogan is the Millionaire Choice Show, where I talk to millionaires and future millionaires about how to build wealth and what to do with it once you have it, because wealth has a purpose. So if you're a future millionaire, you're on your journey. You're doing the right things to get to become a millionaire. It may happen in a few years. It may happen, over a couple of decades, but you're at least on the path and the journey. You're going to be investing aggressively. You're going to be on a budget or spending plan because your money is much more intentional. When you get it, you value it more. You're going to put it in the right places. You're limited to no debt, or you have a smart use of debt, and which we're not going to talk about today, but you're talking about using debt to buy things that appreciate or go up in value, like a house or a property, or even a collectible. Like I used to collect baseball cards and football cards. That is something that goes up in value, usually. And then you don't buy things like cars on a regular basis that go down in value. The average car loses 75% of its value within the first 5 years. So if you keep spending your money on nice new cars, it's slipping away from you. It's going in the wrong direction. Now, there are some contingencies on that if you're using it for business or something like that. Conservative spender, usually, maybe you're just more conscious of how you spend your money. We have a bad habit of eating out as a family. When you're trying to cook for 8 people, that's a little bit tedious every day. So we like to eat out a lot more than we probably should. Mathematically, when we eat out as a family, I'm spending between $80 and $100 for food. And it's not even that great of food. Panda Express, we spend $100. Now we got a lot of food, so we were able to make 2 meals out of it. Got 2. But I know that I can feed my family at home for $30. So I can feed a family of 8 for $30 a meal, and be a pretty good meal too. It'd be good food. And so those are ways that money can just very easily slip away from you. And the economy we have today, it's for the younger people, it is a very experiential economy where people are doing a lot of eating out, a lot more eating out than they used to when people used to grow food. You have clearer financial goals, clearer financial vision, and you're consistently learning more about money, which we're going to talk about in a second. And then finally, in the millionaire spot, you know, it's pretty simple. I mean, you spend less than you make, you have excess cash flow, and then you're putting it in the right places. You got I call it the glorious budget or the glorious spending plan, because it's, you know, usually buttoned up. And you know, it's very intentional. Your money is very intentional about where it goes. You're a master of your debt. You know, you don't have like 6 credit cards with 24% interest taking all your wealth. The common thing I hear here, if people do use debt, I haven't had credit card in 20 years, but people that do have credit cards, the common thing they're going to say is, I pay my credit card off every month. I don't carry a balance on my credit card. That's the phrase you had. And they say, I like the points, or I like the interest when you get the 3% cash back. But that debt does not control them. It's not putting pressure or strain on their finances. It's working for them, and they're using it in some ways. You're going to pay your bills on time, no stress. Like growing up, our power got cut off, our water got cut off, our electricity got cut off. Like we had lots of problems with debt and lots of problems with bills not getting paid on time. Even to the point we would turn our own water back on. So the water company would come out, turn the water off. We would go out and turn it back on. My dad trained me how to do that so that I could go out and do it on my own when we needed to do it. You know, when your mom comes home from work, she's like, hey, I want to shower. Why is the water off? Oh, the bill didn't get paid on time. And oh, by the way, we don't have the money to pay it. So let's just go turn the water on, take a shower, you know. And that works pretty well until you still don't pay it and they come out and padlock it. And then, you know, there's other issues that ensue there, reconnection fees and things. Bigger financial vision, bigger financial goals, and your money's smart and getting smarter. So, I want to park on those just for a minute, because your mind, when you get to this point, your mind undergoes a journey. So when I decided to become a millionaire at age 25, I would say I just got going in the right direction, which is what I want all of you to hear to do today. After this call today, if you're not already a future millionaire, I want you, after this webinar, to be a future millionaire. I want your mind to be reprogrammed. I want you to start moving your mind and start moving your money in the right directions where you can create that cash flow and eventually arrive at this point. But from the time I started at 25 to where I'm at now, you evolve. And so once you get started, you're moving in the right direction. Once you arrive at your destination, your mind is reshaped and you think about things differently. So my goals are bigger, my vision's bigger, and I've developed a habit of continuing to learn about money so that I can even figure out new ways to make money multiply, to manage it and multiply it. So let's take a look at this. You're living in one of these two areas. So you're either a scarcity-minded person with money or you're an abundance-minded person with money. And I want to contrast these two so that you can identify yourself in this. A scarcity mindset usually says, I can't. There's excuses and reasons. We looked at the 4 misbeliefs of wealth. There's excuses or reasons you make on why you can't do something. An abundance mindset walks around going, I can. I believe I can do that. Whatever that thing is, usually you'll say, I can do it. Now, there are obviously some limitations to that, but generally your mindset is very positive, very proactive. I'll never have enough money. It's kind of more of a victim mentality mindset. You know, we'll never get by. We're stuck where we are. Oh, this struggle is just killing me. Opportunity is everywhere. These are factors that are identified with people who are in that future millionaire bucket and making changes. Why is life so hard? Life is full of opportunity. I don't have enough time. You know, I'm so busy. How can I maximize my time? The average, interesting statistic, the average American watches between 120 and 130 hours of television a month. If you break those numbers down, that's basically a full-time job. And so what's happening is instead of people working in an abundance mindset, they're working in a scarcity mindset. And my kids do this sometimes. And I never let them tell me they didn't have enough time to do something. If I tell them to do the dishes or tell them to do whatever, my wife the same way. If she tells me she doesn't have time, I'm like, well, what did you do with your time? What did you do? Because we always, as people, we always find enough time to do what we want to do. The real problem is we didn't want to do something. We didn't want to read a book. to learn how to manage our money better. We would rather watch the NFL, or we would rather watch a golf tournament. Whatever those things are, we'd rather watch Netflix, right? Or Amazon Prime, or Hulu, or The Mandalorian on Disney, right? We would rather watch those kinds of things rather than invest in ourselves and invest in our future. And your time is an investment just like your money is, and you have to learn to use your time properly. I'm stuck here for life, which is another excuse. I'm moving forward. I'm going to change. I'm going to make a difference. These are all universal things that I've heard from every millionaire I've interviewed on my show. And it's too late for me, and every day is a new day. You know, it doesn't matter what age you are, you can still do this thing. And then the last ones, how can I be the best me? You know, I'm not special. How can I be the best version of me? And that's really the goal, is to go, how can I become the best version of myself? Because there are people before you that have done the same things you can do and you're trying to do. And so you should look at those guys as trailblazers and figure out how to follow in their footsteps. This is Kelly Hollingsworth. She was a guest on my show. Feel free to go check her episode out. She was a 13-year-old housekeeper. So Kelly grew up, she's a very interesting person, grew up in a single-parent home raised by her mother. She was raised with a few sisters, I think, 3 girls, 2 sisters. And her mother had to deliver newspapers to make enough money to support the family. And so Kelly would go across the train tracks and clean houses for the rich people. And so she saw a difference between how she was living and how these people were living. And that got her little mind turning to go, how can I be them instead of me? We're struggling with money. How can I be like them? And so she grew up and decided she was going to become a lawyer, in college, become a lawyer, because she knew that lawyers made lots of money. So she studied to become a lawyer, and she waitressed to pay her way through college. And then as a lawyer, she investigated hedge fund fraud, where she met all these people that were supposed to be investing gurus. And she figured out, hey, I could do what they're doing. And so she became one of the first female hedge fund managers in the world. And then she became a millionaire in her late 30s. But she went from, her mom delivering newspapers and cleaning houses at 13 to becoming a hedge fund millionaire. And then now she's teaching people, especially women, how to create 7-figure incomes. Very, very interesting person. Comes from a lower income background. Yeah, and I mentioned that. Teaching skills-based approach to making more money. Great person. So this is millionaire key number 3. In my book, I have 10, what I call 10 millionaire keys. And those are the things I attribute to helping me kind of break free from a bad financial background to building some wealth, moderate amount. And that's getting money smart. And this continues with that theme of your mind. You spend in your years as a student, you're going to spend 12 years of education on math, English, and science. The reality is, and then 4 years of college. But how much financial ed did you actually get? So you didn't really learn about money. And so this is the typical MO for most Americans. So it's a small wonder that, over 70% of people are living paycheck to paycheck because they didn't learn basic money principles, either from their family or from the school or anything. And I won't go into why that's the case. I have some reasons behind it. But the reality is, if you want to be smart with money, you need to study money. You're going to have to study it. Just like you learned about math, English, and science. Just like if my son works for Taco Bell, he had to learn how to run the drive-through and learn how to make tacos, right? So if you got to learn how to make tacos to be good at making tacos, you got to learn how to, be good with your money. So learn how to make, manage, and multiply your money. Just remember that, every day you want to be thinking about, hey, how can I learn to make, manage, and multiply my money better? So, spend some time. We talked about maximizing your time, spend 1 hour or more a week. You can learn in all kinds of different ways these days. Podcasts, YouTube, blogs, magazines, like all of these things. When I started, it was really bookstores. So I started with magazines and books, and it only took me about 90 days to figure out that I could become a millionaire. It wasn't that complicated. Money really is just a math problem. And when you put the knowledge behind it and a plan behind it, some amazing things can happen. But this is the principles you want to get into. So here's a list of books. You can find this book. These are just ones that I've hand selected, and I'll be adding more. This is in what I call the Wealth Builders Toolbox on my website, themillionairechoice.com. But let me leave you with these challenges. Read 1 book per month over the next 12 months. Listen to 1 money podcast per episode. If you do these 2 things for the next 12 months, you will become some of the most highly educated financial people on the planet. Like, think about it. Like, you will be in the top 5% of people who have learned about money, and you just need to keep that habit up. You need to build that as a routine. And if you continue to do that over time, where you're continuing to get money smart, you're going to be a totally different person. Even within 12 months, you're going to be a totally different person. So again, these are on the millionairechoice.com. You can check them out. All right. Principle number 2 I want to talk about, leave you with something solid here, is creating a wealth building spending plan. I don't like the word budget, because I've known people, when you use the word budget, they just instantly put up a barrier and they're like, oh, I don't want a budget. Your hair on the back of your neck stands up, and you get really uptight. And there's usually in a marriage, there's usually one person that likes details in budgeting and one person that hates it. So when you use the word budget, just throw that out. I use the word spending plan because it's a lot more fun for me to have a plan on how things need to work together than it is a budget. And you can also do what I call loose budgeting or a loose spending plan. And that is really related to getting your money flowing in the right direction. And that's millionaire key number 5, which is watch your money. You can't build wealth without a plan. You just can't do it. You have to have some sort of plan. And this is one of those plans. And so this is the way I look at budgeting. I break my first 3 categories down in what I call super categories: living money, play money, and then others money. All right. And then living money is the money you need to live on. I hope that's large enough. It includes your rent, your house payment, electricity, water, food, car payment, gas, things like that. Things that you have to pay every month just to exist and live on the planet. Play money is the money that you spend to enjoy life, have fun. I bought a boat at one point, paid cash for the boat. We kept it for a few years, and then we didn't use it as well, so we got rid of it. But we spent some money on play, and, travel's a big thing for us. We like to travel. So my wife didn't grow up vacationing. But I did. My mom and dad took us places. So that was a new thing for my wife to go, hey, I like this vacation thing. I never had a vacation before. Now I get to have one. And so we had to plan around that and keep it balanced. Netflix, Amazon Prime, gym memberships, anything like that you don't have to spend, but it just kind of makes more of your life more fulfilling. Put that in your play money bucket. And then I'm a big believer that you should have a bucket for others. And so whether that's, going to a church and tithing money, or supporting orphans, or birthday presents or anniversaries, things like that, that's all money that you have that's flowing out to someone else that may be in need, or maybe it's a birthday present. So those are the things. The category that people leave off a lot of times, and the reason so many people are broke, is they don't know about this bucket, and that's the wealth money bucket. And the wealth money bucket is money you set aside to build wealth for yourself and your family. It needs to be very intentional. And when I'm going to break it down and show you just a simple way that I did this when I was a kid, or 25, I say kid, but 25. I was making about $3,000 a month. And so when I had my financial awakening, as I call it, had made about $3,000 a month, $39,000. I got my W-2 out of college. I go, where the heck did all this money go? I made all this money, but I've got $500 in my checking account, and I'm $16,000 in debt. I took inventory. I had a car in the parking lot, the driveway. I was living with my mom and dad at the time, paying $200 a month in rent and food and board. And then I had a desk, a bed that I made, and a computer, and nice kicking stereo, because I believed, my wife is going to bring the furniture when I get married, but I'm going to bring the stereo. And I had a 4-door car. I should have had a 2-door sports car, but I had a 4-door car because I was planning ahead, for having kids. That was my life. But I took that money, and as I learned, and I'm like, I can't keep spending all this money like I've done. Like, I'm overspending. I got to rein that in. So what am I going to do? And I did a really simple plan. I took $1,000 of each of those months and then broke it into these 3 categories, generally speaking. And I said, I'm going to pay off my debt. And I got about 16 grand in debt. So $1,000 is going towards my debt. I'm going to live on $1,000 because I'm, paying my mom and dad are just charging me $200 a month in rent. So I'm in pretty good shape here. And then I'm going to take $1,000 roughly and put it in my wealth money bucket. And I split that money between mutual funds and stocks. And so I was investing about $500 a month in both of those. That was my initial plan. And it's just very simple. And with that plan, that was my plan to actually become a millionaire by age 40. Now, eventually my debt would be paid off, and I would take that debt and throw it into my wealth money bucket. So I would not move it into my living money. It would shift over into my wealth money bucket. And that was my 25-year-old plan. So let's look at what wealth money looks like. And this for a wealth money goal, I like to tell people don't work off percentages, but although percentages are a good gauge, I say, set a goal of $10,000 for your first year. Is that something you can do? Can you hit $10,000 a year in wealth money? If you've never done it before, that's a huge goal. Most individuals don't have more than like $3,000 in savings account anywhere. Like that's the majority of Americans. So if you change your mindset to go, hey, can I get 10,000 in there? Well, once you hit that goal, up it. Keep stretching yourself. These are called stretch goals. So how can you keep going up that number? Okay. The average financial advisor you talk to, if you use a financial advisor, is going to tell you to invest 15% of your income in retirement. I don't like that number because if you're making 50 grand a year, 15% really doesn't get you anywhere on the journey to building wealth of 50,000. So I like hard numbers because it causes you to ask a different question. Can I hit 10,000? Can I hit 20? Can I hit 40? That forces you to go find new ways to make money. It keeps you from getting comfortable in a job that is underpaying you. It makes you stretch yourself to get to do more with your life. And I know what people are capable of because I've coached a lot of people. The overall, and you can download this off my website if you want to use this form. I just want to see you get your money flowing, and you'll see the percentages on the wealth money side. Start where you can, wherever you can start today, just like I did when I was 25. But start where you can and then keep upping that number. Keep stretching yourself. At my peak, I believe we were putting about 60% of our income into wealth money and retirement, buying properties, different things like that. And that was earned income, not investing income. So we were able to reach a pretty high level of wealth money because I worked on my income. I worked on my skills. I did not waste all my time. I actually invested in myself and grew myself. And then no spending plan, no wealth. And no spending plan, no wealth. That's where it ends up. That's where you're going to be. So your money's going to slip through your hands just like sand. It's just going to disappear. So you have to have a plan for it. This is Cordell Fraser. He's a dear friend of mine. I call him one of the millionaire marshals. I've got a couple of friends that are in the U.S. Marshal Service. I call him the millionaire marshal. Cordell started late on his financial journey. He grew up in Mississippi. The good thing about the family he grew up in is they didn't believe in debt, so he didn't have any debt. But he didn't know anything about investing. And he was a low-income family, joined the military where he learned discipline, became a U.S. Marshal, and then he was taught that debt was bad when he was young, so he didn't accrue debt. And but he didn't know anything about investing. And he started his millionaire journey at 38. He had $75,000 in a savings account. And then he started to learn how to multiply money and went whole hog into it. And then at age 47, just 9 years after he started learning how to invest, he was able to become a millionaire. And now he's a couple of years older, and I believe he's closing in on $2 million now net worth. So, and he invests in everything. He'll invest in a fractional racehorse ownership, just anything. What he's done is reprogrammed his mind to get his money flowing towards wealth and abundance. So his money doesn't flow away from him anymore. He shifted it all mindset-wise into, like, he knows he can multiply it. So he's always like a game trying to figure out where he can put money that'll actually turn into $2, take $1, turn it into $2, turn into $3, turn it into $4. And he's a really incredible guy, but he grew up in a meager, humble beginnings, not a lot of savviness or understanding about money, and then developed it at late in age and is off to the races. Last principle, take a couple minutes here. One of the things that happened to me on my journey was when you have money, you can help people. The more money you have, the more people you can help. And that's a core principle for me. Now, on my journey to building wealth, my mindset only allowed me to understand and help people on a limited basis. Now, because I have more money, I'm going, oh, I feel a purpose behind the money that I make. I have a purpose for earning more money. Like, I have a reason to earn it, not just to enjoy life, but to expand that. And on this journey, I learned that there's, over 147 million orphans in the world. And we work with a company called Hands and Feet Project. There's a lot of companies out there, groups, organizations that are out there helping people. They work in Haiti specifically and have, I think, a couple hundred kids that they support. Hunger, world hunger, 829 people malnourished worldwide. 38 million people in the U.S. go with lower nutrition than they should have, going hungry. Some 12 million children don't get meals every day, right? They might get fed once a day. They might get fed once every 2 or 3 days. That's the reality of America. That's the reality of the world. And then 9 million people die each year from hunger, starvation. And when I pulled this image, this is obviously from Africa or the Caribbean. There were some other images that I wondered if I should show, but they're kind of scarring. They're very scarring when you actually take a look at the hurt and the struggles that people face every day that we don't face in our world and in the USA as much. We don't see it as much, but other people are facing every day. And that drives me. That drives me for why I'm going to do my finances. My wife has a book coming out on human trafficking in January. And we've learned about human trafficking a lot over the last decade. And, you know, the statistics are pretty sad. 40 million human trafficking victims across the planet. A lot of them are enslaved labor. They don't get paid. They're working off debt, making bricks by hand in some countries, like I believe India does that. And then 4 million of those people are sex trafficked. And without going into too many details, there about 99% of those people are women or young children. You know, women, I think the average age for a woman that's sex trafficked, I think is like 14. And when a woman gets pulled into sex trafficking, the average lifespan is about 7 years. So from the time they get into it, these are all things I learned on my journey to building wealth. And it's what's driving me now to go, hey, you know, Tony, I don't just need to be a millionaire. I need to be a multi-millionaire. I need to teach people how to become multi-millionaires so that they can go out and attack these problems. There's no shortage of problems that need to be addressed. There's just a shortage of people who want to address those problems and a shortage of money. Yeah, and that's what drives my purpose of wealth. And I hope that you'll latch onto that and grow into it. Last story, and then I'm wrapped up. This is the boy who turned blackberries into apples. I love this guy. His name's Jeremy Newsom. Jeremy grew up in a low-income family. His dad didn't manage money, but he watched Forrest Gump with his dad. And when he watched Forrest Gump, there's a scene in there when Forrest talks to somebody telling him about his life. And he goes, yeah, Captain Dan bought this apple, this fruit, and we no longer have to worry about money. And so this young 6-year-old Jeremy Newsom looked up at his dad and says, Dad, why is he talking about this fruit that they bought and they no longer have to worry about money? Because we worry about money in our house all the time. Like, we're struggling. Like, why is that? And his dad said, son, that's Apple computers, and they're supposed to be in every household in America, and people are going to be buying them and being on the computer. And he goes, well, Dad, I think we should buy some of that too. I think we should buy some. So his dad said, son, that's just make believe. It's just the movies. And he persisted. Young Jeremy said, no, Dad, I really think we should buy some. Dad says, hey, you go find some money and I'll match whatever you bring me. Jeremy goes outside, 6 years old, starts climbing fences, picking blackberries, putting them in little cartons, taking them to the neighbors, started selling blackberries to the neighbors. And then he comes back to his dad and says, hey, Dad, I've got some money. His dad goes, okay, son, how much you got? You know, typical dad looking down at his 6-year-old kid. I do it too. Like, yeah, well, you're bothering me, kid. What are you doing? And he goes, I've got $1,500. His dad goes, pardon the English. Oh shit. I don't have $1,500. So he picks up the phone, calls his brother, says, hey, I need to borrow some money. I told my son I was going to match his money to buy Apple stock. So he gets $1,500 from his brother. They go buy $3,000 in Apple stock in like 1996. And that matured up into, I think, about $10,000 or $12,000 when Jeremy was 12. His dad sold the stock. Today, that stock will be valued, I believe, at $14 million. Okay. But his dad sold it because his dad never learned about money. He didn't learn. So it was Jeremy. But what happened in that is that started Jeremy's journey into investing. This is Jeremy's island in the Caribbean. So British Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands. So he holds retreats here, events down here. You can pay to go down here and hang out at his island. He's just a really cool guy trying to help people, what he calls enrich lives and find financial freedom. JeremyNewsom.com if you want to check him out. Philip and everybody, I really appreciate it. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to share today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tony. Thank you for sharing with us today. Yeah, Tony, it was Good, and I appreciate your time today. I'd say, one of the questions, I don't know if anybody on this call kind of has this question or this thought or this mindset, but let's say we have somebody on this call, ton of credit card debt, has a car that they leased, and a high mortgage payment, and they're looking at this and they're saying, yeah, that's great. The four buckets and stuff like that, but I'm literally drowning right now. I don't know how to get out of it. Well, what advice would you have for somebody like that?
Yeah, I would say get alongside somebody. The first thing I would do is go find a mentor, somebody that you can talk to. I do a free hour call for anybody on this. You can book it right off the millionairechoice.com. I set aside 1 hour a day on my schedule every day to talk to anybody that wants to call me, just because I know that I can transform somebody's life even with just 1 hour if they'll do what I tell them. On top of that, the things you need to do is you need to take a hard look at your debt. If you don't have enough cash coming in, you got too much debt, you got to do some shuffling. And I can't cover all that on just one call here because everybody's situation is somewhat unique. Some people have a house that they can leverage to get their debt out of the way. But the simplest thing you can do just to start getting control of it is you really want to take your debts and organize them from lowest to highest. And then you want to look at your interest rates. And so you want to look at them lowest to highest, and you want to try to start getting some traction. So you want to start paying the lowest one down first and work your way through those debts, because you can start doing what's called a debt snowball and compound those payoffs. But the one deviation from that is if you've got a card that has a larger balance and a really high interest rate, like I've looked at some people's interest rates, like 24, 27, 30% on their credit cards, that may be a card that you want to move up. Even though it's a bigger number, you may want to move it up several notches in your payoff plan, because you're just going to get so much more traction if you're not paying 30% on a $10,000 debt a year. That's $3,000. So you want to move that one up, but you've got to look at that. Some people may have 3 credit cards. Some people may have 10. It runs the gamut, but that's the biggest thing. The lease deal, lease is like the worst way you can go buy a car, in my opinion. When you actually do the math on how much it costs you in future wealth, and people just, re-up leases every 2 years just because they like the simplicity of it. The people that are selling you that lease, they know that. And that's the highest profit margin product that they can possibly sell on a car. They are making the most money they can make when you get a lease, unless you get some like ridiculous deal on it, then you might come out well on it. But the way I stack up cars is you go, lease is the worst, purchasing a brand new car is the next worst, and then buying a used car is the best monetarily, but it also depends on your situation. So we've bought used cars and had no car debt now for over 20 years. That's just how we roll. And the initial used cars we bought were, $3,500, and we could drive those for about 3 years, and then we would move to the next car. Now we buy more expensive cars. I think the last one I bought was $31,000. We wrote a check for that. There's different strategies for a lot of this stuff, but each person's situation could be slightly unique, but there are patterns in there. And it would start with lining up those debts from smallest to largest, and not paying a little extra on every card, right? Some people pay a little extra on every card. What you really should do is pay the minimums on all the lower debts, and then go to the one that you can pay off quickly and just accelerate it. You want to pick up speed and debt acceleration when you're paying off debt. I also would like to talk about at some point, if you guys want to give me a call, the concept of working your way out of debt, using your earnings to pay off your debt, or investing your way out of debt. There is a case to make for where you can use a different strategy to pay off debt. And that's beyond the scope of what we can talk about on the call today.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. And the thing I would say from a psychological standpoint is, things don't get seen when they're in darkness, and you have to bring light to money management. I grew up in a household where my parents didn't want to talk about money, right? It was like this taboo thing. You didn't talk about it. You didn't want people to know you were struggling with debt and finances and that sort of thing. And that's not a good approach. Debt, finances, money, it should be something that we regularly talk about with our significant other, talk about with our spouse, bring it to light. and talk about it. Once you get past that uncomfortableness of bringing it out and exposing it, it gets easier and easier over time.
Absolutely. Yeah, you get it. I think that there's a lot of shame and guilt when it comes to money, and also a fear. It's all psychological. Like I said, your money mindset, and that is part of it, Philip, is just being willing to go have a conversation with people. I talk very openly with my kids about money, about wealth, about debt. I tell them where we're at. If things are tight, they know it. If things are well, then they know that too. And I'm just trying to get them as children to engage in the financial conversation a lot earlier than I did when I didn't really get into it until I was 25. My mom always told me, hey, basically don't do like I do. Go save your money. You need to save money. But I didn't see her saving money. I saw her struggling with money. And she wasn't really leading by example. Now, my parents worked really hard, so they set a good example. I don't want to be trashing my parents. And they provided a lot for me. But they just never learned. They never learned how to do things differently. And that's the big thing is, like, if you want to be broke, keep doing broke things, broke habits. You have to find new habits. And some of that is attaching and having conversations with people about your money. And just like you said, be open.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much today. And thank you everyone for joining on this month's webinar. I look forward to seeing everyone next month.